You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Now, a letter to myself with Joel Chua.
Thanks so much for your company. Our guest today is a father of two young children who has been through a rather challenging journey that extremely few other parents have. His elder child, Christopher, has an extraordinarily rare and serious medical condition for which there is currently no permanent cure. In fact, Christopher is the only patient in Singapore with this condition. It's known as bile acid synthesis disorder. And according to SGH, there are only about 50 reported cases worldwide. Christopher's father joins us to share his journey. Jeffrey Toy, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Christopher is 8 years old.
He's going to turn 8 in December.
Share with us first, what were the events that led to Chris's diagnosis?
When Chris was born, everything seemed okay. He was, as far as we could tell, a healthy baby. No complications. But in the first few months, we realized that no matter how much milk he drank, even though he seemed to be feeding well, he wasn't hitting his weight milestones. So he stayed light. And he seemed jaundiced. We thought it was the normal, new baby jaundice, right? So we tried putting him under UV light, bringing him out to the sun now and then. But it never seemed to fully go away. So I think the turning point came when the first experience was he sustained a cut on his nose. And so typically any cut that a human being sustains, a small one, heals within maybe, or at least it stops bleeding within 10 minutes, maybe, you put a plaster on it. But this cut didn't heal for like a day.
Right.
So we thought, okay, this is strange, but it eventually did stop bleeding. So we thought, okay, that's the end of that. And then the second incident was when he went for a routine blood test. So it's the finger prick kind. And that one didn't stop bleeding for like 36 or so hours.
Right.
And we knew that something was terribly wrong.
Okay.
So that's when we brought him in for checks and tests. And he had to stay in hospital for a few days with a whole barrage and battery of tests that were run, some of which had to be sent overseas. Eventually, even my wife Amelia and I had to have our blood tested as well to determine exactly what was going on.
Right. And this was all when he was just a few months old.
Yeah, correct. The diagnosis was when he was 6 months old. Yeah.
When you received the diagnosis, what exactly did the doctor tell you and what was your reaction?
So in the run-up to actually finally getting the final diagnosis, there were a few possibilities that were pretty scary. One of which was, I can't remember the name of it, but the life expectancy was not high, and amongst other things. But when we finally got the actual one, we were thinking like, okay, what are the implications? And the doctors told us that he'll need to take this medication every day because he's lacking, or his liver can't produce cholic acid. So okay, that seemed okay. I think the hardest hit was when I suddenly heard the cost of it. So at first it sounds okay, right? Oh yeah, he just needs to take this thing once a day.
Right, and orally as well, right?
Yeah. And things will be okay, quality of life will be okay. I mean, if he responds well to it. And I'm like, okay. But I mean, this was at the time because they didn't do any tendering or what. They just checked to find ballpark figure. They said, oh, it's going to cost you 20,000 a month.
Wow.
So, I mean, you have new parents, first-time new parents with a 6-month-old baby who are already trying to their level best to, take care of him, take care of ourselves, get through each and every day and night, especially for my wife. And now you tell us that you're going to need medication that costs 20,000 a month.
Right.
So yeah, that was we were flawed. Yeah, basically like, okay, what do we do now? Yeah.
What did you do at that point in time?
I think we took a moment to just be quiet because we didn't know what to do, right? But thankfully, we weren't quiet for long, and our entire family, both sides, rallied around us. We met to talk and discuss and think about what to do next. And wisely, our family felt that, the very first step now, despite the cost, is to get the medicine into our hands to administer it now, immediately, because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that he needs and lacks.
Right.
And the medicine is not in Singapore. So we had to go source for it. So immediately we were looking around, looking online, asking around, searching.
Were you doing this by yourself, or were the doctors helping you as well?
Yes, the hospital was helping as well, but the hospital process would, understandably have taken a while because, they have to find it, they have to tender, or I don't know what the entire process entails, but it wouldn't be as quick as I'm going to go buy it myself now and get it.
Right.
But our family found the first batch that way in Australia. And so happens that one of our relatives was going there and she went and got it and brought it back.
Right. So this was just privately procured. It wasn't.
Basically, yes. We needed to do it because the money wasn't the important thing now. It was getting Chris the help he needed.
Right. And this was during the early years after the diagnosis. What was some, besides the financial considerations, which are significant, as you've shared, what were the emotional issues and challenges that you had to manage?
Well, the typical questions come, right? Like, why us? Why him? Why? The chances of it happening, having the defective gene from me and Amelia, and for Chris to have both is 1 in 200,000 chance or something like that. So, these questions, anyone would ask themselves. So, we do attend church. So that was what we clung to. That was what helped us get through it and process what we were going through. And besides that, it was very strongly our family, our friends, our church that really rallied around us and brought comfort, brought practical support, brought emotional support, brought spiritual support. We couldn't have asked for more. Yeah.
Right. What was the turning point?
As in
terms of the material support that you received.
Yes. Okay. So, besides sourcing for the medicine and all that, we definitely were at the same time trying to find financial support because, it's an astronomical cost.
What was it again? $20,000?
Yeah, that was the
month.
ballpark figure that I remember being told. But it was lower at the start. But regardless of that, it was still very high, and it would have only increased because it commensurates with Chris's weight.
Okay.
So by the time he's a full-grown adult, it would be really, really, really high.
Right.
So we applied for support. And in the first year we couldn't get anything. I can't remember why, but then I think the second year onwards we did manage to find some. But okay, so the major turning point was we heard rumblings, as in our social worker and our doctor told us, we've heard of this thing, this fund that seems to be it seems to be in the works for rare diseases. But at that point we didn't know any better. We didn't know what the progress was or what was going to happen.
How old was Chris at this point?
Wow, 1 plus 2.
Right. So still quite early on in the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Then my wife, she works for your competitor, for Straits Times. She was given the privilege of being able to write a column, and she shared about the journey at that point thus far, about us and Christopher. And then it was out, the news was out, and one of the members of parliament, Dr. Tan Wu Ming, he picked it up.
Right.
And he reached out to us. And I think he was already trying to be a champion for rare diseases as far as Parliament goes. So he brought it up to Parliament, and Christopher was one of the examples, amongst others, which he already had. And I think that helped to push things forward. I can't know for sure,
Right.
but it really seemed like it did.
Right.
And within a few months, the RDF was set up.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much of a difference has the Rare Diseases Fund made to you and to Christopher?
An invaluably immense amount. I mean, I shouldn't go into specifics as in figures, but it has alleviated so much of the burden. It has granted us a chance to live a more normal life. It has helped us to feel better, helped us to understand that we are not alone. And it has honestly been a huge blessing to all of us. Yeah.
How is Christopher doing?
Yeah, he's great. He's always moving.
Yeah.
He's always talking. Yeah, he's a bundle of joy. Sometimes he drives us crazy, but you know.
As most 8-year-old boys will do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, share with us his quality of life. I mean, the kinds of adapting that, may be required of him and the family because of the condition.
So, I mean, because of the incidents that led to the diagnosis, our first concern was like, whoa, does this mean he can't fall down?
Yeah.
Well, if he sustains a cut, will it go on forever? But no, the moment he started to respond well to this medication, everything just normalized. So it's like Chris is this model of a person that's missing one block.
Okay.
And this cholic acid is that block.
Okay.
So once it was given to him,
Right.
everything functions as normal.
Okay.
It's just that he has to take it every day. But quality of life wise, no difference. Just like any other 8-year-old boy.
Right.
Yeah.
Does Chris understand the condition that he has? Does he understand the implications of the condition that he has?
We've told him, or we've tried to explain to him bit by bit, as far as we think he can fathom. He seems to know that he needs it every day, and that he must have it, and that he can't go without it. But I don't think he understands. I mean, I'm very sure he doesn't fully comprehend the implications of what it means for him in the long run, when we're not around, and what it will require to sustain. Yeah. Which is one of the things that we were wondering about, like, as Chris reaches his teenage years, and older, when he really starts to be able to understand, the value or the cost of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The conversations that you and your wife Amelia have had about how to share this information with Chris. You must have had conversations like that.
Yeah. I think it was a bit fast forwarded also because I guess in school he had access to a computer during one lesson or something like that, or elsewhere. I'm not sure, but he said he tried to search for himself on Google.
Oh.
He found the article. He said his conclusion, his takeaway is that he's a really special boy.
Wow.
Which is true, but he doesn't understand like the full meaning of the word special in that context.
How did you and Amelia respond when he shared that perspective with you?
I guess it was bittersweet. Sweet in that, it's quite a cute reaction, right, from him, and sweet that he feels that he's special, which he is.
Yeah.
Bitter that, the truth behind this instance of special is not all roses. Not all, yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your story. If you could reflect on this journey as you have been with us, and if you could write that letter to your younger self, considering everything that you've been through, what would be the main messages in that letter?
Study harder.
Yeah.
Be healthier.
You and me both.
No, I'm well, in the context of writing a letter to myself at the point of Chris's diagnosis, I think I would firstly tell me that things were going to be okay. That whatever it seems to be like now, things would have worked out.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing is that to take things one step at a time. When we were in early days, we saw so many doctors. We spoke to so many healthcare professionals, one of whom was this gentleman, a doctor from India, if I remember correctly. And he had stopped by Singapore, and it was arranged by our KKH doctor because he was a liver specialist.
Right.
So we could, speak with him, ask any questions we wanted, and get his take on things. And he knew that, everything seemed daunting to us, and things were hard-hitting, and everything was, difficult. But he told us, don't try to take it all at one shot. Don't try to even think of it in its entirety. He said, try to break it up into packets of 5 years, because that will make things more manageable.
Yeah.
That will make things easier to plan for. That will make things more palatable. As opposed to at the time when we did our calculations, we were thinking, oh, if Chris has to take the medicine from now till he dies, I think it ran into like the tens or hundreds of millions. So it was just too much to bear, I think, with everything else that was going on. So yeah, taking things one step at a time, because that's all we can do. But I think one more additional thing that I would tell my younger self at the time was that it was all worth it. Yeah. Everything that you're doing, everything that you did that has led to this point, it was worth it. Just looking at Chris now and how he is out and about, how he drives us crazy, how he plays with his sister, how he tells us about his day, how he is reaching all his milestones. Yeah, it was worth it.
Yeah, that's really moving. Tell us about, when that doctor came about, right, and he shared with you that perspective. Take it one step at a time. Up to that point in time, things seemed overwhelming, right? These days, you are trying your best to take it one step at a time. How are you doing that? What helps you do that?
Well, now as the kids start to grow up, there are even more things that are coming along, like music lessons, dance classes, swimming lessons, tuition. I think we've learned along the way that we need to do it because that's the only way we can approach it. So the one step at a time mindset and game plan has been ingrained into us. I think it's just something that we know that we must and can do, and we have been doing, and that has been what's been helping us now. I mean, of course, you some days you get inundated with so many things, but at the end of the day, we just walk on and go to the next step, and we'll settle the next thing, and it's been okay so far. Yeah.
Of course, that third message that you shared with us that you'd say to your younger self is, despite everything, it was all worth it. It is all worth it. Chris has a younger sister as well, as you mentioned, Elizabeth, who is 3 years old this year. Right? When you and your wife were considering having another child, did the thought, because Chris's condition is genetic in nature, did that thought cross your mind? And what was the conversation around that?
No, for sure, because so the odds of it happening again, seeing as Amelia and I both have that defective gene, was 25% that she would get both, just like Chris. So because it's 25% she has mine, 25% she has Amelia's,
right.
25% she has neither, and 25% that she has both. Okay. So there was a 25% chance that she would have it. So when we were even considering having a second child, we were wondering, should we even think about it at all? But we came to the conclusion that, we didn't want Chris to have a companion. We didn't want someone for him to play with, to confide in, to stick with. So we went to explore, we went to ask, how can we circumvent this risk? How can we mitigate this risk? So we found that the way to do it was IVF. So yeah, Elizabeth was an IVF baby, and we were able to ensure that she didn't have the condition before we proceeded. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you shared about how Chris and Elizabeth, they're playing with each other like any normal, 8-year-old and 3-year-old would be playing as siblings. Tell us a little bit more about the relationship between them.
Oh, most of the time, she adores him.
Most of the time. Yeah, that's the important qualifier.
Yeah. She looks up to him. She wants to do everything he does. She wants the things that he has. In pink. I think they play really well together. They interact well for the most part. But as always, as with any siblings, they sometimes quarrel, they fight. But I think overall, it's been fun. It's been good. Yeah,
it's like any normal sibling relationship.
Yeah. They're really sweet to each other, even though sometimes they purposely act like they're not. Like there was one incident where we were recently at a relative's place, and there were a bunch of snacks. Elizabeth wasn't there, by the way, because she was asleep at home. So my auntie offered Chris the snacks, a tray of them to choose from. And then Chris was like, he felt, I'm not really interested. Then he looked at them and he said, "Oh, this one Mei will like, I'll keep it for her." Wow, my auntie couldn't take it. She's like, "Oh, that's so sweet." But yeah, just little things like that really show us that it's worth it. Yeah. Yeah.
Does Elizabeth have any kind of comprehension that her elder brother has a medical condition?
I don't think so. She just knows that he has to take the medicine every day.
Right.
Because she sees it, but she has no idea as yet what it entails now.
Okay. Yeah. And it's been all worth it.
Yeah.
Like you shared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Could you share one recent, experience that you've had with both Chris and Elizabeth, that really drives home that point for you?
So we've been living with my in-laws for a while because of, everything, and just because we need the support. Recently, as in we're starting to move into our new place. So we've been trying to, stay like on the weekends, a night here and there for them to get used to it, even the idea of it. Yeah. And they currently sleep in separate rooms, and they each have their own room in the new house.
Okay.
When we went there, they both immediately said, "Can we just sleep in the same room, please?" And they did. It took a while to get to sleep, but the intention and the execution eventually were there. Yeah. So that was sweet, and yeah, it felt nice that we were in our own home as a family, despite everything that has happened.
Jeffrey, you are planning for the future. You have to plan for the future because the medication that Christopher is receiving that helps him lead a normal life, it's lifelong medication. What are the main considerations that you and your wife have to think about as you plan for Christopher's future?
So I think being parents to a child like Chris, we understand that, we can't just splurge on things or like go for lavish holidays, as maybe some families have the privilege to, that we need to watch how we spend every dollar. But also we are extremely thankful and extremely, grateful and that we're supported by the RDF, and the RDF has ensured us that it's supposed to be lifelong.
The support for Christopher will be lifelong.
Yeah,
That's
hope
good
for
to
a
know.
lifetime is the slogan. But also we need to do our due diligence, as in our family, not as in both sides, Amelia's and mine. We have made plans for how we want to invest funds, set aside funds for Chris to help and to help support him, when we're gone as well, and when he needs to handle this challenge on his own. And of course we also need to continue teaching him the value of money, which he may not fully comprehend right now. Now he just knows about buying chicken rice and erasers from school. But slowly, yeah. And
he's only 8.
Yeah.
I'm curious, we've talked about your experience, in the context of your parenting journey with Christopher up to this point in time. But how has this experience influenced other aspects of your life, in the most significant and positive ways?
I think it has naturally, inevitably made me more resilient, I would say, because this is a challenge that not many of us will face. Of this magnitude or of this nature. And so in that sense, we've grown from how we've had to face it and what we've learned along the way. But also, I think very importantly is that we realize how much we need each other. And I realize how much family really means to us, and friends and church. And the fact that we support each other and that we can be there for one another in love, Yeah, so those are the things, like resilience and gratitude for all of that.
Thank you for sharing that. That other letter this time, if I can invite you to share. You shared your letter to your younger self earlier. That other letter to your future self now. If you could write that letter, what would you say in it?
Yeah. I think the first thing is I'll remind my future self about the things that I said to my younger self. I hope you have remembered that things will be okay and that you should take things one step at a time. But I also want to tell my future self that, I really hope that you've been, if anything, the best example that you can be to the kids and to your wife. Because as much as we are trying to handle all the logistics and the administration and all that, we want to make sure that the kids grow up to be good people. So what if he can swim or play the piano or do math? More importantly is that he becomes a good person. Because I think that will underscore and affect and influence everything else he does in his life. And everything he does for the society that he's in. Yeah.
Being that role model for your kids.
And I hope that they can weed out the good and not learn the bad, because we're not perfect. Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and the most valuable insights and lessons that you've learned through this journey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. You can subscribe and follow A Letter to Myself on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And leave us a review as well if you liked what you've heard. Till next week, I'm Joel Chua, signing off.